All right, a very warm welcome to you. This is a conversation known as MyChat with a bank CEO, a conversation that is brought to you courtesy of the Kenya Bankers Association, that is KBA, and a number of banks trying to look at what is happening in the banking industry, looking at topics and exploring different topics from a banking and financial perspective. I mean, these are the guys who run the financial institutions. They make the major decisions. So who best to advise you or to explain how things work behind the scene, apart from the bank CEOs? I mean, this is the second in a series of conversations that we'll be bringing to you for the next couple of weeks, looking at different topics and exploring different topics. We are live on X. We're live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube. At Kenya Bankers is the handle to use. At Jim Cario is where you can find me. And the hashtag to use is the CEO chat. Remember, the hashtag to use is the CEO chat. My name is Jimmy Mbogo, and I will be your host for this session. And I'm currently joined here in our makeshift studio by Miss Mary Mulili, the Managing Director and CEO of UBA Bank. She's one of our guests today, and she will be talking to us about cross-border trade and payment solutions and the opportunities therein for SMEs in Kenya. Remember, you can send in all your questions. If you have a burning question that you want explained, if you are a trader playing in that field, this is an opportunity for you to get the best expert advice on what you need to do, where you need to improve, and how you can get assistance from the financial institution. In today's conversation, again, the hashtag to use is the CEO chat. And our topic on this episode, we're looking at cross-border trade and payment solution and opportunities for SMEs in Kenya. Miss Mary, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbogo.
All right.
I mean, you're saying we're experts, but we learn a lot from you.
Wonderful.
Media really brings a lot to what we do, and we rely on a lot of information that you bring it to us. So good morning once again.
Yeah.
My colleagues, business leaders, other CEOs. I'm very delighted to be here today to discuss this topic that is very dear to me and even dear to the bank. So I'm really happy to have this conversation today and just see how do we support SMEs to make this dream a reality across the continent.
All right, wonderful. And already I can see that experience. I mean, you've been in this space for at least 2 decades. You've served in different facets. I mean, you've had various roles, including corporate, commercial, public sector institutions. But the question that comes to mind, and particularly when we speak about trade within Africa, after the ratification of the Inter-Africa trade, that is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, what we expected then is that trade within Africa is going to blossom, but we haven't seen that. And the question that comes then to mind is, what are some of the challenges that are making it hard to trade between countries, particularly those in Africa?
Okay, so we can make very good policies, but again, if you don't come together and collaborate, that is all the institutions in this policy making, and to take a deliberate action, we won't see results. And I'll just give you an example.
Yeah.
Yes, we've done these policies, but how many of these SMEs really know what opportunities exist and exist where? For instance, we have some of the products rotting in some of our markets in Kenya, but there's some markets in the continent that need those products very much. And part of those imports I was talking about from outside the Africa is basically touching on some of those products. And in partnership with AfriExim, a platform they launched just recently called the ATG, Africa Trade Gateway. This is one of the initiatives to really bring in the buyers and sellers into this platform. And any bank or any organization can actually log in and get this information. So if I'm an SME in Kenya, if I log in into this platform, I upload my documents, I get verified. I'm able to cite any market or anyone who needs some of these goods across the continent.
Yeah.
Again, trade associations, through trade missions. And the challenge we've given most of them is that trade missions doesn't have to be going to some of these markets. We are operating in a digital age. How can we make these exhibitions in these platforms available to these SMEs to have the knowledge? So you find most of them, yes, we say is lack of financing. For me, I say it starts first with the knowledge. Do you even know where the market and the quantities are needed in these markets? Then the next piece is logistics. As an SME, if you tell me to move goods from here to DRC, I might not know how to do it. And you might come to me wanting many containers of a certain commodity. Probably I can only produce a container or maybe a quarter of a container. But through collaborations, aggregation can be done to ensure that many SMEs can actually aggregate to produce that container or those containers that are needed in these various markets and ensure that we export. And we've seen entities, and that for us, like I'll also give an example of UBA Kenya, like DHL, that we are working with, entities like Real Resources, in terms of doing these integrations and managing the logistics end to end, taking that headache away from the SME. All we want you to do is to do the supply. We show you where the market is. We've partnered with AfriExim. We show you where the market is. We show you how to aggregate. We show you how to handle the logistics till the end to end of that. Then the other challenge that most of these SMEs face is I sell my goods in, say, in Ghana. My buyer in Ghana wants to pay me in cedis. They don't want to pay me in dollars. And I've quoted my goods price in shillings. How do I get back my money? So again, through platforms within the bank itself to enable these collections from one market to a market, and also through partnerships like with AfriExim, where we are through the Pan-African Payment Platform Systems, PAPS, which is live. I might say, as a bank, actually, we are the only ones in this market who are doing the B2B, the business-to-business collection in the marketplace. So you can bill your goods in shillings. Person who is receiving the goods pay you either in Naira or cedis, and you collect your money back in Kenya in shillings. Because you want to be very sure that the price that we quote would be impacted by any fluctuations in the currency. If you are selling your goods for 10,000, you'll get it back at 10,000.
All right. And as we go on, we'll talk about the PAPS system, and we'll talk about the currency fluctuation. But there's a question that you will always hear, particularly with SMEs and business, even established businesses operating in the continent. One of their biggest headache has been cross-border payment. Why is it such a headache? Why does it cost so much to just make a transaction? I mean, you operate in 20 countries.
Yes. What has been happening is that because if you quote your goods, for instance, if I'm producing in Kenya, I'll probably quote my goods in dollars. The person who is receiving the goods, if the same case I gave in cedis, will have to convert their cedis to dollars to transfer those funds to the supplier in Kenya or Uganda or whichever market they are buying the commodities from, who then has to convert the funds back again to buy their raw materials or pay for the services locally. So you find the cost of moving these funds across 4 times: cedi to dollar, dollar to shilling, to dollar received in Kenya, then dollar again to shillings. There's a bit of value that is lost there again, and it becomes costly. But with the platforms like which we have internally in terms of our cross-border collections, as well as PAPS, you are assured if I quote 10,000 shillings, I know I'll get 10,000 shillings. I won't face any charges in terms of my transfers, and I'm sure whoever is making my payments, even from their end, if it was equivalent to 50,000 cedis, they know it's just 50,000 cedis, and it makes it very, very easy for them.
All right. So on average, how much would you say we lose in those transactions? I mean, by the time you're converting from Kenya shillings to US dollars, then it's being converted using the Ghana cedi again. How much would you say we lose in that process?
I could put it below 1% again. And we've had cases where somebody in the bank receives their payments and they say, I was expecting to get $100,000. Why have I received less $10 because of the cost of movement of these funds? So you find, yes, it might look minimal, but again, if you accumulate it for an SME, in the larger scale of it, would be a big quantum.
All right. So for someone operating in Kenya, and particularly those within the MSME sector, and I want to now cross my and sort of expand my market from Kenya to outside the to other parts of the continent, when should I do this? At what point do I then know that my business is ready for expansion into Uganda, into the southern parts of the continent, or even into the northern parts of the continent?
Just to take you back to the example that I gave, and looking at the platforms that we've created with different
Partners, yeah.
with partners like AfriExim. A good case being the ATG, the African Trade Gateway. When you log in there, you're actually able to see the list of all the potential importers per product. Okay? And again, the importer on the other side is also able to see a list of all the potential suppliers by market,
Yeah.
and the products of and each of the country, you're able to actually see that. And again, also for us as a bank, really, just speaking about UBA now, just coming again to UBA, where we have a span of about 20 countries. Within our desks, we have very active trade desks, where again, also such opportunities we also expose to our clients across all the continent. But a platform that is currently up and used by all the banking in the industry is the African Trade Gateway, where somebody can be able to log in, the banks themselves, the customers of the bank, suppliers, and the buyers. And an SME is able to really get real-time data in terms of where the demand lies and what quantum in which market in the continent. So the tools are there, and SMEs can actually access them.
All right, and again, just speaking on SMEs, one of their biggest headaches that they will tell you is getting financial support from financial institutions whenever they want to expand. Someone will go to on the ATG platform, they will find a business partner that they want to either supply or buy goods from, but then when it comes to raising that money, they might not be as liquid as expected. But when they come to bank, and in terms of support, what more do you think financial institutions such as yourself can do in supporting these SMEs?
Okay. I must commend the Kenyan banks, really. Kenyan banks have done a lot of work. And if there's one space that the Kenyan banks have taken, even as an industry, through KBA, we've taken an active role in ensuring that we do MSME lending. And even through our reports to Central Bank, we have to quarterly update how much are we spending or supporting in terms of these SMEs. And we've seen a lot of innovations in the market. Yes, we know, and we've heard from the MSMEs as an industry, that security is one of the challenges that they face. Financials, because some of them are not organized. And we've seen across the banks coming up with innovations with credit risk insurance entities, guarantee fund entities like African Guarantee Fund, and taking cover on these portfolios to ensure that we don't ask for securities for these entities, and that up to a certain limit of borrowing, we don't require securities for MSMEs, just to ensure that they go the initial teething problems as businesses and to grow. So if you look at the industry on average, we've seen about $50,000 to $60,000, which has been offered by banks in the market on an unsecured basis, up to about $150,000. Where again, to these sectors, we've seen part guarantee cover, which the banks have taken on behalf of MSMEs, and again, also not calling on the financial documents. Again, something that we've also seen in the industry, and most of the banks have done it, is holding these clinics with the MSMEs through umbrella bodies like KEPSA, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Chamber of Commerce, just to ensure that we engage these MSMEs in terms of the record keepings. And some of them, you realize, even as you engage them, it's not even the funding they need. It's just a bit of organization that they need within themselves. One, if you're able to structure the transactions, to support maybe a big corporate, maybe an MSME might not be able to export, but can I be an outgrower, say for a KTDA that is exporting? And based on that corporate entity, we're able to structure facilities around them. So there's been a lot of innovation, really, I must say that. And we've seen banks do capacity building, coming out with different products to support these MSMEs. So it's time to action.
And it's actually a good thing that you bring out the packaging aspect of SMEs, because the question that a lot of these SMEs then might have is, how do I package myself in a way that once I go to the bank, then I'm not perceived to be a
Yes.
risky borrowers? What are some of the metrics that you will look at as a bank and say this is a good SME and the business that they are in, then we are able to finance, or this needs to adjust A, B, C, D so that we can be able to support them?
Okay. So I'll start as records, really. And we've even gone outside the span of even using the bank statements, even to looking at your M-Pesa statements, because some of them really get their payments through the M-Pesa statements. Just seeing our cash flows coming, the business that they're running in, our payments coming. Again, if you're an SME, is looking at who is the party who is taking up your products. Are they a reliable party? You know, based on that, can we take risk on you based on just who you're dealing with, and not really demanding of a lot of other conditions.
Yeah.
Again, at that level, is just looking at how you organized, even as a business. Yes, it could be a family business, but how you running that business as an MSME. And again, the product that you're supplying, what is the demand for that product in there? Both local market or supplying demand into a value chain to a big corporate that could then again sell these products at a large scale. So those are some of the things that we look at. Again, history of in your statements. Do you have instances of bounced or unpaid? Regular, history of unpaid items, even at the M-Pesa level. Do you have some of those digital loans that you've not paid? It might look small, but again, it just goes on to tell about your character. And, in lending, character is even more important.
Yeah.
Because I know if I give you money, you will be able to deliver or do what you're supposed to do and pay it back. So character is very important as an SME. And even as they do all the interactions and transactions, may it be on the digital platforms, again, that history of repayment.
Yeah.
When you fuliza, please make sure you
repay.
within time. Yes.
And actually, just to remind our viewers that last week, in our previous conversation, one of the things that we touched on, particularly when you're trying to look for credit, when you're trying to access capital, there's about 5 C's of lending, and this is character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. Those are some of the things that you need to remember whenever you're trying to get financial support from your bank. And just to remind you that if you're following these conversations, you can continue sending in your questions, and I will be sure to sample some of them even as we go along. The hashtag to use is a CEO chat. Now, Mary, moving this conversation forward, a question that comes to mind is a question around risk mitigation. And one of the risks that we know that players within the cross-border trade face is currency fluctuations. So what do SMEs need to do to prepare themselves and ensure that this risk then does not affect their business as much as we might have that currency fluctuation, they're not affected the most?
Okay. I just gave an example in my previous comment, and just looking at the platforms that we as banks are currently using now, where you price your commodity at 5,000, whoever is paying you from the other country, it will reach you as 5,000, and the PAPS platform has enabled this. Yes, you will ship your goods, give your price in local currency, and you will know you'll be able to receive your funds back in the currency that you've identified, or you've priced your commodities in. And it's more to encourage most of these MSMEs even to get onto that platform as well, if they are planning to do cross-border trade. Okay, because you don't have to go through even the headache of converting CDs to dollars, then dollars to shillings.
Yeah.
You leave alone even the money moving, even the headache of, even as you're pricing,
Yeah.
you having to move that. You'll just price your commodities in local currency, and you'll know you'll get your funds completely the way you priced it back home in the local in the local currency.
Yeah.
For instance, if you're trading in Kenya. So that is one major way, and it's available in most of the banks that our SMEs can actually use it.
All right.
Okay, we've also seen the banks, the regional banks, including ourselves, who have also internal platforms for collections, which enable that this platform, these SMEs are also able to get their payments back back home and get it back wholesome.
And in relation to that, Mary, one of the things that, of course, a lot of them struggle with is the question of pricing.
Yes.
If, let's say, I'm selling this glass for 100 shillings
Yes.
in Kenya, there's a tendency that once I export that glass, it should be able to fetch 150. How important is pricing? And for banks and the SMEs that you work with, what role does that play in terms of facilitating them and ensuring that the business they run then is profitable, as opposed to just running on and saying and hiking the prices, trying to make an even bigger kill?
Okay. So again, there's what you call your cost of production. Okay, as an MSME, and just taking it back again to record keeping, because again, how would you know that I need to price this glass even at 150 if I don't know what my cost of production is?
Yeah.
So a part of what we engage these MSMEs with is also just understanding how to keep their records, to know what is your total cost of production, both the direct and the indirect costs. Then again, the other factors that they look at is the logistics part of it. Like I said, when you're producing in Kenya, there's an element of moving. The glass won't move from Kenya if it's not moved.
Yeah.
And there's a cost that goes with this in terms of the costing. There's also costing of insurance when you're exporting your goods. You also have to factor things like also the insurance. Again, at that point, if you're the one who is bearing the cost, you have to factor it in your cost of the product. And the other thing to look at is also the demand and supply. Again, demand and supply also plays a big factor. If you go to that platform and you see there's a need, and the person who has put on that platform, they've already put a price in terms of how much they want to buy this product as. I mean, for you could engage them. If the price is right for you, again, also you take it as well. But again, it boils down to these SMEs understanding to keep their records, to know what is really their cost of production. Yeah, and not only look at the direct, because some of them stop at the direct cost.
Yeah.
And you forget the indirect costs, which again could also be heavy. So it's again keeping records and understanding the cost, and again agreeing what is your set margins that you would require as a return for what you've invested. Because if you've borrowed from a bank, probably the interest rate is at 15%. It's also a cost to the business, and also the cost of the investment by the shareholder or of the SME owner.
All right, now I want you to speak to SMEs and in terms of just advising them in terms of the time to expand. What do they need to look at before they say it's time for me to expand? And also just looking at the region and globally, the kind of markets that we have. I mean, when we talk about inter-Africa trade, we're talking about a market of 1 billion people. That is no small market. So what advice would you have for SMEs when it comes to expansion?
Okay. You know, if they say if you want to hide anything from anyone, keep it in a book. Yeah. And I'll probably flip this to, you know, if you want to get ahead in terms of your business, is ensuring that you invest in research. Okay. Fortunately today, as we speak, you don't need to go to a library or to go look for this information. We have all this information available digitally. And if you look at a country in Kenya where the mobile penetration is over 100%, it means that even at your phone is a wealth of information, and you can actually get a lot of this information. So there's a lot of publications that have been done.
Yeah.
One, if you look at the African Free Trade Continental Trade Area, a lot of publications that are normally done. If you look at AfriExim itself, the Africa Trade Report, there's a lot that is done there. Even when you come home to the Kenya Bureau of Statistics, they have a wealth of a publication they do on a quarterly basis, which shows all the parameters of the sector. And thereon, if I recall, if you go to page like 98, 99 of it, it lists everything that is produced in the country. It also lists everything that we've been importing and from which country, and also what we are exporting and to what countries.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if you look at the current report, it's just showing Kenya what we've seen the uptake in terms of exports. It's things like tea, cement, steel, digital services. All these are only talking to about 1.2% of how much we export as a country. There's still huge demand. And if you look at the trade deficits or trade imbalances in some of these countries in terms of the things that they require, it's all listed there. Okay? I've also given the other example of the African Trade Gateway, where again, when you log in there, you'll also find a whole list of potential importers whom can form your initial part of the business. So all this information is there. So I'll say start with research.
Yeah.
Okay? When you start with the research is work with banks. Again, in this kind of cross-border trade, because you might never know the supplier one-on-one. So banks standing as that guarantor between the buyer and the seller. Because also when the buyer is releasing their goods, or the seller is releasing their goods, they want to be sure that they'll get paid.
Yeah.
You might not have to go to Ghana or Naira to confirm, but financial institutions and the banks locally then play that role, to bridge the interactions between the importer and the exporter.
Yeah.
Then based on the quantities that are required in terms of the export is again seeing in terms of the resources that you have. Do you have adequate resources to supply what has been called for within the specified time by the suppliers, by the importers? Because again, in this cross-border trade, you have to adhere to the timelines. And this is what will ensure that you get repeat business.
Yeah.
So again, it's to internally check, do you have the enough resources to be able to do this trade? If not, then the needs will come in. Your financial partner comes in to support you, to bridge, to ensure that you're able to export
To meet the orders.
and meet the orders within timely.
Yeah.
And you can find that an SME that has a line of $100,000, for instance, can actually turn it around in a year to make it $2 million, depending on how fast they're able to meet the orders, get paid, and move to the next orders.
All right, and let's speak about solutions.
Yes.
And one of the things that I'm sure a lot of our audience would want to know is for SMEs that are looking to scale. Do banks have the solutions that they want, particularly in capital solution, in terms of capital solutions for them, for those that are looking to scale?
Okay. If you look at the stage of the SMEs, and I'll just walk through the journey, you'll find there are those who are emerging, probably will just link the opportunity. They know somebody who wants to, who needs a certain raw material or commodity, but they can't produce it. So they will act as a bridge. They'll know the person who has it and act as a bridge. Then they move to what you call now small, where now they start a level of producing these products and probably selling locally. As they grow, because again, you realize that your margins improve as you move to value addition.
Yeah.
Because if you're just acting as a broker, just buying and selling, somebody has put on already their margin, and for you to be competitive, you have to cut on what you expect in terms of your margin.
Yeah.
So you find they have to move higher up in terms of starting to do their actual productions themselves, where they're able to save on a lot of costs, and they're able to pass some of these benefits to their clients. So when you look at banking partners, we have solutions all the way. When you imagine, probably what you need is information, not even credit.
Yeah.
As you grow, we start giving you now what we call the working capital to ensure that you're able to meet these orders. But as you grow, you need to set up your own premise. Then we come in where we give you longer term facilities, like if you're buying equipment, if you're buying trucks to transport your commodities, then we step in to give you this funding, which is much long term, to be able to accommodate the business, while the working capital is mainly tied to that trade cycle. We ensure that you're able to meet the orders, get paid, clean it out, get another facility as you keep on growing in terms of your business. So we have both. to answer your question. We have both the working capital and we also have the capital expansion facilities to our MSMEs as well.
All right, now, being that you have operations in at least 20 countries on the continent, I'm sure there's something that you have picked up. And I want you to help Kenyan SMEs and those that are watching this conversation. What is the most common mistake that you find businesses making when they're trying to scale or when they're trying to get into that cross-border market?
Okay. One, again, you get into a market and you've not done your research. And I'll just give an example. I once had a customer over 10 years ago, and they were exporting meat to Angola. One, meat is perishable. There is one document which they missed out. And while they had really built their business and they had scaled up, that meat went to waste at the airport in Angola because it couldn't get discharged. And that took that SME to ground zero. So one is to do research, work with partners like banks, because if you work with a bank, even as you're exporting, will help you review these documents to ensure that you've gotten it right. And even with our partners that we are working with, we'll help you to review this documentation. We'll also ensure that you get on board things like insurance that will step in the event of any mishap during the transportation of these commodities.
Yeah.
And again, ensure that you get the right funding in the right quantum. I'll say right funding in the right quantum.
Yeah.
Again, I can give you a huge facility that will just take you out of business. But again, being responsible enough to ensure that we give you the facilities that we need. We're just not giving you facilities to meet targets. We're just giving you facilities that you require and that will speak to your business and ensure that you achieve what you want to achieve as an SME.
Yeah.
So we've seen that mainly not doing the research. Again, if you're doing it directly without having a partner like a bank mediating. Remember, if you export, if you release your goods, you release them. And you don't know the other person on the other side. What guarantee do you have to get your payment?
Yeah.
So with partners like banks, we are able to bridge that funding. And again, also ensuring that if you start producing, you're producing with numbers and facts.
Yeah.
Where there is market or demand. You're just not going to produce and there's no market. You must think of the market first before you start your production.
All right, now, and when you attend some of these trade conversations and trade fairs that you will see, one of the biggest lamentations that we have been receiving is the similarity of products that are being sold. You'll find that if we are exporting Kenyan coffee, there is a similar company that is doing the same in Ethiopia. So how do we make sure that what we are producing for export is unique? How do we ensure that ours is unique and can attract a different market?
Okay. Value proposition. Okay. And if you've done your research very well, you'll understand what are the emerging trends in the market, the market that you're trying to serve.
Yeah.
For instance, if you look at Nigeria, coffee sells, but I realize the coffee that sells is coffee that is mixed. There's a make of coffee that is mixed tea and everything. So you just put it in water and you have everything.
Yeah.
While that might not sell in a market like Kenya. If you look even at the bottle of our soda packaging, Coca-Cola, in Kenya it's different. When you cross the border to Dar es Salaam, it's different. Again, it's also understanding your market and even the tastes that your market needs and how they want their product done. First, is there an opportunity? Is there a need for coffee in that market? If yes, then what coffee do people want? Yeah, is it processed coffee? Is it ground coffee? What coffee do they want? If it's tea, is it tea just in a packet or is it tea in a sachet?
Yeah.
So once you understand your market, then you're able to place the right product for the customers. Competition is good, and it's also encouraged because that is what leads people to deliver something much better, and it should be encouraged. So we shouldn't say that because Ethiopia is exporting and Kenya, we still exporting. They still need how much tons of coffee are needed in that particular market, and how do we need to package it differently? Yes, to meet the market
and the
need.
demand that is there.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
so let's go back to the payment conversation.
Yes.
And I just want to know the place of digital payment, because when you speak to a lot of SMEs, the biggest concern is that I have supplied goods, I'm still waiting for the money to come. So to sustain my business, I have to go and borrow to continue my operations. So how then do we address this in terms of payment solutions? What are some of the options that these SMEs can then onboard to make that to facilitate that payment, so that they get their payments on time and continue their business without the need to get extra credit?
Okay. So it all starts first with the terms that you've given your buyers. Because if I've given my buyer 90 days payment period, I don't expect my payment today.
Yeah.
However, with that invoice that is confirmed from my supplier, I can walk to my bank and get discounting out of this invoice and ensure that I'm getting ready for the next shipment. That is on the first part of it, on the working capital, to bridge the working capital gap. Yes, your buyer might want huge quantum, but wants to be given time to pay. Then the banks will step in to be able to support you on that.
Yeah.
The second one, in terms of the digital solutions, in terms of the collections, I've talked about, for instance, the Pan-African payment platform, which you get your payment T+0. And there are entities in this market, because of protection I can't mention.
Yeah.
We've seen those payments happen. You know, a payment is released in Ghana, in cities. You receive your money in Kenya today in shillings. So those solutions are already there. Yeah, and SMEs can actually plug into them to ensure that their payments come on a timely manner. But on the part where they've given credit terms, as banks, we can be able to step in to support them, even as they wait for the payment. So that's why it's so important to work with partners like banks to be able to be supported.
All right, so even as we go towards wrapping up this conversation, there's a question around entry-level barriers. What do SMEs need to know, particularly beyond doing the research, beyond being ready beyond having the surplus that you need to export to a different market? What are some of the entry-level issues that they need to make sure that they know, that they're aware of, before deciding that now I have products that I want to push to Tanzania or to Zimbabwe or somewhere else?
Okay. Entry would be, like if you are starting up, is again funding. Okay. Because when you start talking about cross-border, it's not somebody coming to buy, if you're producing tea, 10 packets of tea.
Yeah.
It's either somebody who needs a container, 2 or 3 or more. And it might be difficult for you to raise that funding for the initial capital. So one of the barriers would be access to capital. And that is where we are here as banks, to ensure that we walk with you through that journey.
Yeah.
The other one is on the logistics management. They are big. It might look small, but it's really, really big. If you look at the licensing locally for you to export anything, you might not need less than 20 certifications. So again, through our partners, and we partner with some as banks, we ensure that we help you work on these documentations, that they are ready for export. We just don't wake up and just say you're going to cross the border with a truck of tea.
Yeah.
It won't happen. Yes. So there's a level of documentations, and we're able to work with the SMEs to ensure that they are document ready, even as they take up this journey. So finally, documentations for export to ensure that they deliver in terms of what they're looking to export.
All right, the one thing that has come out so clearly in this conversation is that at one point for these SMEs, they will need to go and get financial support from a financial institution, be it a bank or any financial institution. So the question that then comes to mind is, how does a good loan repayment history boost an SME's chances of getting this funding?
Very much so. It does. Like I said, out of those 5 C's, you spoke about it, and I like it. You're a good student. Character plays a big role.
Yeah.
Okay. Plays a big role. Also, the entity that you're dealing with, in terms of your off-taker, also plays a big role. Again, you might be a startup, but maybe the person you're dealing with on the other side could be a Del Monte, could be, a big entity really that is known, and just based on what you're doing with them, we can structure as banks something around it to be able to avail you funding. But character is number
Plays
one.
a big role. Yeah.
Yes. Character plays a big role, and your records. If you look at how we are formed as a bank, every expansion that we do in the continent or outside the continent really means to support every trader, everybody that is looking to do business across the boundaries of the earth, not only in Kenya, but across the continent. And what a time to have this conversation when Africa is really trying to organize itself to see how do we do business with each other. Because for the longest time, we've not done business with Africa. And just to quote one of the reports that was done by AfriExim, that is the Africa Trade Report for 2024. If you look at the numbers, we did trade of above $1.5 trillion. I don't know whether that has sunk. $1.5 trillion. And out of this, only 220 billion was trade within Africa. That is less than 25% of the total trade that was done. Yes, there was growth year on year, but still, the numbers are still very, very low. When you come to Kenya, in the same report for 2024, we did a total trade of about $36.6 billion. Out of that, we did $8.9 billion in terms of our exports. The rest was imports. The interesting thing is that while we did all this trade, our trade within Africa was 15.5%, which is slightly more than what the continent trade with each other was. But again, now the numbers get scary when you drill them further. Out of these numbers, only 1.2% was exports to Africa, and 3.4% was imports. So I mean that we still spend a lot of our money outside the continent. And that is where the opportunity really lies, not only for the banks, but also for SMEs, companies that are operating within the country. And that is where we come in. And as a bank, we've aligned ourselves to really speak to this agenda, to see how can we move these numbers up. Because the opportunities are there, the solutions are there. We've seen even the Kenyan banks also moving across the boundaries. And again, even as we look at the numbers, as we have this conversation, we'll also see part of what we really exported out of that 1.2% is these services, digital services. So there's still more to be done within the continent.
All right, so as we bring this conversation to a close, Mary, now I have to ask you this. If you weren't a bank CEO, what business would you be doing?
I would be a farmer.
What would you be farming?
I'd be a farmer. I'd be a farmer. And again, if you look at the agriculture space, and there's still a lot of opportunity. And from where I sit and looking at the continent and the markets that we're actually operating in, there are areas with a lot of supply and there are areas without. And this creates an opportunity when you speak about food. So we are still not yet food sufficient as a continent. And there lies a lot of opportunity. But again, I'll twist it. And this is just also for the SMEs. What value do we add to this? Because that is where the money is when you talk about cross-border. You're just not going to export tea leaves as leaves. What value are you adding based on the various markets that we operate in? So that lies a huge opportunity.
So would you have considered farming for export?
Yeah, why not? At least you leave the narrative that you're preaching. Really, it's always good to do that as well. So maybe when I retire.
All right, and thank you so much, and thank you for making time to be here and to be part of these conversations that we're just looking at. What are some of the issues that are in the banking and financial sector, and for you as a customer, for you as an investor, what are some of the things that you need to do going forward to make yourself and give yourself that opportunity and the best start in whatever business it is that you do. Thank you for all the time. That has been our time here on MyChat with the bank CEO. Do make sure to to join us next time. #to use is the CEO chat. At Jim Carrey is where you can find me. At Kenya Bankers is where all these conversations are happening. Thank you for tuning in. Let's do this again next week. Same time, same place.